Fort Moore, Georgia. 4 in the morning. The barracks were dark, except for the dim glow of emergency exit signs casting red shadows across rows of metal bunks. Sergeant Maciel Hay lay perfectly still under a rough wool blanket, her eyes open, staring at the springs of the bunk above her. The air smelled like gun oil and sweat, mixed with the faint scent of pine trees drifting through the cracked window. Outside, Georgia humidity pressed against the building like a wet towel. She could hear them in the hallway. 2 male voices, just outside her door, talking in that half-whisper soldiers use when they think no one's listening. "Give her 3 days," one said. His boots scraped against concrete as he shifted his weight. "Maybe 1 week if she's stubborn." The second voice laughed, low and certain. "Bet you $20 she quits before land nav." "They always do." Maciel's hand moved to her dog tags, fingers rubbing the embossed letters out of habit. It was the same motion she'd made as a kid on her uncle's ranch, touching the shell casings in her pocket for luck before a long shot. Her jaw tightened, but her breathing stayed even and controlled. She'd heard this before. She'd heard worse. In her mind, another voice echoed. A friend from 2 years ago, sitting across from her in a college cafeteria, laughing at her dreams. "You'll never make it in the Army. And there's no way you could become a sniper." Maciel blinked slowly in the darkness. Those words had burned themselves into her memory, and she'd carried them like ammunition ever since. Real stories, real courage. Hit that subscribe button so you never miss a moment from Hidden Sniper Stories. And drop a comment. Where are you watching from right now? Maciel Hay was 23 years old, 5'5", with calloused hands and sun-weathered skin that came from years working outdoors. She was a cavalry scout with the 1st Squadron, 91st Cavalry Regiment, part of the legendary 173rd Airborne Brigade. The Sky Soldiers. Rapid Response Force for Europe, Africa, and the Middle East. She'd earned her airborne wings. She'd proven herself in the field. And now she was here at the Army Sniper School, one of only 2 women in a class of 28 soldiers. Her rifle sling hung on the post beside her bunk, adjusted exactly 3 notches from the end. Muscle memory from the ranch. Some habits you don't forget, but right now, in this moment, none of that mattered to the men outside her door. To them, she was dead weight, a diversity checkbox, a quota to fill. They were waiting for her to fail, and she could feel the weight of their expectations pressing down harder than any rucksack ever had. 2 years earlier, Sierra College, California. Maciel sat at a cafeteria table with 3 friends, picking at a salad she wasn't really eating. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, and the room smelled like reheated pizza and industrial floor cleaner. She'd just told them about her decision. She was joining the Army. Her friend Jessica stopped mid-bite, eyes wide. "The Army?" She said it like Maciel had announced she was joining the circus. "You?" The other 2 friends went quiet, glancing at each other with those uncomfortable looks people get when they don't know what to say. Jessica kept going. "I mean, come on. You're smart. You're going to college. Why would you throw that away?" Maciel shrugged, keeping her voice calm. "I want to serve. I want to do something that matters." "But the Army?" Jessica leaned back, shaking her head. "And what? You think you're going to be some kind of soldier? Like, with a gun?" Maciel met her eyes. "I want to be a sniper." The table went silent. Then Jessica laughed, not a polite chuckle. A full, mocking laugh that echoed across the cafeteria. "There's no way you could become a sniper. That's insane. You'll never make it." Maciel didn't argue, didn't defend herself. She just nodded slowly, absorbing the words, filing them away in a place where doubt turned into fuel. That night, she filled out her enlistment paperwork. And 3 months later, Jessica's number was blocked on her phone. Some people see obstacles. Maciel saw targets. She'd grown up on ranches in Rockland, California and Medford, Oregon. Wide open spaces where the smell of sagebrush mixed with dust and the only sounds for miles were wind through dry grass and the distant cry of hawks circling overhead. Her Uncle Si had taught her to shoot when she was 12 years old, starting with a .22 rifle that kicked less than a BB gun. Patience wins, he told her, his weathered hands guiding hers on the stock. Not speed, not strength. Patience. By the time she was 14, she was hunting coyotes with a .308, protecting the cattle from predators that came down from the hills. She learned to track before she learned to drive. Learned to stay motionless for hours, waiting for the perfect shot, while other teenage girls were learning to apply makeup and navigate social drama she never understood. Her high school friends noticed something about her. She could find things. Lost car keys. A specific tool buried in a cluttered garage. A face in a crowded room. Her eyes worked differently, scanning and processing and identifying details most people missed. They started calling her Sniper. At the time, it was just a nickname. A joke. Nobody imagined that years later, that joke would become her reality. But Uncle Si knew. When she told him about joining the army, about wanting sniper school, he just nodded and said, "You've been training for this your whole life, kid. You just didn't know it yet." Basic training was a crucible. Fort Jackson, South Carolina. Summer heat that made Georgia feel like air conditioning. Drill sergeants screaming, privates crying. The smell of boot polish and the taste of dust during low crawls under barbed wire. Machiel didn't cry. She didn't complain. She showed up every day and did the work. At the rifle range, she didn't just qualify. She shot expert on her first attempt. 38 out of 40 targets with the M4 carbine. Most recruits struggled to hit 23, the minimum for marksmen. Michelle was putting rounds on target with a consistency that made her drill sergeant stop and watch. "Even though I only shot sharpshooter at first," she'd later admit, then eventually expert later on in basic training, my drill sergeant encouraged me to pursue the goal of sniper school. Think about that. A drill sergeant, someone who sees thousands of soldiers cycle through, looked at this young woman and saw something special. Saw potential most would overlook. After basic, she volunteered for airborne school. 3 weeks of controlled falling from perfectly good aircraft at 1,200 feet. The roar of engines, the blast of prop wash. The absolute requirement to trust your equipment and your training when you step out that door into empty air. She earned her wings. Then came assignment to the 173rd Airborne, based in Vicenza, Italy. This wasn't some stateside desk job. The 173rd is the Army's tip of the spear in Europe. When things go sideways, these are the paratroopers who go in first. She became a cavalry scout, 19 Delta. The soldiers who move ahead of the main force, gathering intelligence, identifying threats, and, when necessary, eliminating them before they become problems. Her platoon sergeant, Sergeant First Class Antoine Jones, watched her work for 6 months. Watched her dedication. Watched her come to work every single day with one goal, making her team better. And then he made a recommendation that would change everything. You should go to sniper school. Army sniper school isn't like the movies. There's no dramatic music, no slow-motion hero shots. Just 29 days of the most intense, unforgiving training the United States Army has to offer. The course is held at Fort Moore, Georgia. Formerly Fort Benning until 2023, the same place where Rangers earn their tabs and infantry soldiers learn to fight. The humidity is oppressive. The instructors are merciless. And the attrition rate hovers around 60%. 6 out of 10 students fail. They fail because the standards don't bend. They fail because exhaustion becomes a constant companion. They fail because being a sniper isn't about pulling a trigger. It's about patience, mathematics, fieldcraft, and the mental fortitude to stay hidden and still for hours while your body screams at you to move. Michelle arrived at Fort Moore on a humid October morning. 28 students total. 2 women, 26 men. Most of the men had combat deployments. Most had years more experience. And most of them looked at her like she was a tourist who'd wandered onto the wrong bus. Day 1. Pre-dawn. That's when she'd heard the whispers outside her door. Day 1. 0600 hours. The class formed up outside the barracks for the first physical training test. 12-mile ruck march with 50 pounds of gear, full kit, weapon, and helmet. The Georgia sun was already climbing, promising a day that would push body temperature into dangerous zones. Michelle adjusted her pack straps, settled the weight on her hips, and fell into formation. She could feel eyes on her, watching, waiting for failure. Specialist Torres, a stocky infantryman from Texas with a combat patch from Afghanistan, muttered just loud enough for others to hear. Dead weight on a teen gets people killed. She heard it, said nothing. Just focused on her breathing, and started moving when the command came. 12 miles. 3 hours and 40 minutes later, she crossed the finish line in the middle of the pack. Not first. Not last. Exactly where she needed to be. Her feet were screaming, blisters forming on both heels. Her shoulders ached from the pack straps digging into the same spots for hours. That night, she didn't ice her feet. Didn't want anyone to see weakness. Instead, she sat on her bunk and thought about Uncle Si's voice. Pain is just data, kid. It's information. It's not the boss of you. Day 2. Classroom training. Ballistics, atmospheric conditions, wind deflection, and the mathematics of long-range precision fire. The instructor, Sergeant First Class Hendricks, was a 20-year veteran with a salt and pepper beard and eyes that had seen too much. He wrote a problem on the whiteboard. 800-yard shot, 15-mile-per-hour crosswind from the left, standard atmospheric pressure. Calculate the holdover in mils. He pointed at Maciel. Sergeant Hay, give me the answer. She stood, studied the problem for 10 seconds, and spoke clearly. 3.2 mils, Sergeant. Hendricks nodded. Correct. Sit down. Behind her, Torres whispered to another candidate. Bet her boyfriend gave her the answers. Hendricks either didn't hear or chose to ignore it. Michelle's hand tightened on her pencil, the only visible sign of anger. Her knuckles went white for just a moment, then relaxed. That night, during personal study time, she recalculated every single problem in the ballistics manual, triple-checked every answer. Filled the margins of her notebook with formulas and windage calculations and doodles of bullet trajectories. If they wanted to doubt her, fine. She'd make sure there was no room for doubt. Week 1. The range. Zeroing rifles and establishing baseline marksmanship. Maciel was assigned to Lane 12, the furthest position from where the instructors observed. Not an accident. She knew that, but she didn't complain. Her first grouping at 100 yards, a 2-inch spread. Tight. Consistent. Good fundamentals. Torres, 3 lanes down, shot a 4-inch spread and got a verbal attaboy from Hendricks. Maciel adjusted her scope. 1 click left, half click down. Next grouping, 1 inch. Damn near perfect. No comment from the instructors. They walked right past her lane without a word. Day 5. The other female soldier in the class, Private First Class Kim, washed out. Couldn't pass land navigation. Got lost in the woods for 6 hours, missed her checkpoint windows, and was dropped from the course. The male soldiers exchanged knowing looks. See? Told you. Women can't hack it. Maciel felt the weight of that failure even though it wasn't hers. She wasn't just proving herself anymore. She was proving that women belonged, that women could do this. And if she failed, if she quit, every woman who came after her would pay the price. The pressure built like water behind a dam. What would you have done in that moment? Stayed silent and let your work speak? Or confronted the whispers head on? Maciel chose silence. Not because she was afraid, but because she knew the truth. Respect in the military isn't given. It's earned. And it's earned in inches and ounces and fractions of seconds, not in words. Week 2. Fieldcraft and stalking. Students were required to construct ghillie suits, the shaggy camouflage that makes a sniper disappear into the environment. Jute strings, local vegetation, careful weaving that turns a human outline into a formless piece of terrain. Michelle worked methodically, her hands moving with practiced confidence. Stitching, weaving, attaching pine branches and dried grass in patterns that broke up her silhouette. Torres watched her from across the workspace. "Where'd you learn to do that?" She didn't look up. Hunting. What kind of hunting needs a ghillie suit? The kind where you don't want the target to see you. Her stitching pattern was flawless. Not something taught in a weekend class. Something older. Something learned from a man who'd spent 50 years reading landscapes and predicting animal movement. Uncle Si had taught her to blend into sagebrush when she was 15, stalking mule deer in Oregon hills. "If the deer sees you," he'd said, "you've already lost. You don't outsmart them with speed. You outsmart them by becoming part of the world they live in." The stalking exercise came next. Instructors placed human-shaped targets 200 yards out in rolling Georgia terrain. Students had to stalk within 150 yards without being detected. Most of the terrain was open. Sparse cover. Plenty of sight lines for the instructors to spot movement. Torres went first, rushed his approach, moving too fast, trusting his ghillie suit to hide poor technique. Got spotted at 180 yards. Failed. Maciel's turn. She moved like water. Slow, patient. Reading the terrain not for the fastest route but for the deadest spaces, the micro-terrain features that offered concealment. A slight depression. A shadow line. A bush that blocked sight lines. It took her 90 minutes to cover 50 yards. Other students would have gone crazy with boredom. She felt calm, centered. This was her element. This was the patience Uncle Si had drilled into her 1,000 times on those ranch hunts. She reached 145 yards from the target and settled into her final firing position, barely breathing. Invisible. Hendricks walked the course, searching for students. He passed within 10 feet of her position, walked right by. Came back 5 minutes later, walked past again. On his third pass, he stopped, stared at a spot of ground. Took 2 steps closer. His boot was 6 inches from her elbow. Damn. He crouched down, finally seeing the outline of her boot. "How long you been there, Sergeant?" 93 minutes, Sergeant." His expression shifted. Just slightly. The first crack in the wall of doubt. "Carry on." That evening in the barracks, Corporal Davis, a sniper instructor candidate from North Carolina, sat down next to her while she cleaned her rifle. The smell of CLP solvent filled the small space, mixing with the ever-present scent of sweat and fatigue. He noticed a scar on her right hand, pale line running from her thumb to her wrist. "What's that from?" "Barbed wire. Ranch work. You grow up on a farm?" "Something like that." He pressed. "You hunt?" "Every season since I was 12. Davis watched the way she handled the rifle bolt. Smooth. Automatic. Not the way someone trained in basic training handles a weapon. The way someone who's done it 10,000 times handles a weapon. He started to connect dots but didn't say anything. Just nodded and went back to his own gear. Week 3. Live fire. Unknown distance. This was where the math met reality. Where atmospheric theory became wind in your face and sweat in your eyes, and a target that didn't care about your calculations. Instructors set up targets at 300 yards, 550 yards, and 780 yards. Students got 60 seconds per target to range the distance, calculate holdover and wind deflection, and engage. 3 shots total. High-pressure evolution that separated those who'd studied from those who'd memorized. Weather was deteriorating. Wind gusting to 20 miles per hour. Rain starting to fall in fat, heavy drops that drummed against the tin roof of the observation tower. Torres went first, hit 2 out of 3 targets. Got fist bumps and back slaps from the other male candidates. Solid performance. Maciel stepped to the firing line, took a prone position on the wet grass, pulled out her laser rangefinder, aimed at the first target. 307 yards, wind from left, gusting. She ran the numbers in her head, adjusted her scope, and settled into her breathing pattern. Slow. Controlled. Not the sharp military breathing they taught in basic. The deeper, slower breathing of a hunter who'd learned to make her heartbeat disappear. First shot. Center mass hit. Second target. 553 yards. She paused longer this time, watching the vegetation between her and the target. The grass bent left, then straightened, then bent left again. Wind pattern. She made her calculation and fired. Hit. Third target. 780 yards. This was expert-level distance. Rain intensifying. Wind shifting directions. Most students would be lucky to hit paper at this range in these conditions. She closed her eyes for 3 full seconds, ran the internal calculation, felt the wind on her left cheek, heard Uncle Si's voice from a decade ago. Don't fight the wind, kid. Dance with it. Let it tell you what it's doing. She opened her eyes, made a 7 mil adjustment for distance. Another 2 mils for wind, settled the crosshairs on a point in space where the target would meet the bullet. Squeezed. Long pause. Instructors scanning through spotting scopes. Hendrix's voice cut through the rain. Hit. Dead center. Silence from the other candidates. Actual silence. No backslaps. No fist bumps. Torres, still standing near the tower, shook his head. Lucky shot. Maciel, still in prone position, didn't look up. Her voice was calm. Even. Want me to do it again? The group went still. You didn't challenge instructors. You didn't volunteer for extra work. You took your pass and moved on. But Hendrix, something shifting behind his eyes, nodded. Go ahead, Sergeant. She cycled the bolt, chambered a new round. Same target. 780 yards. Worsening conditions. This time she didn't even use the rangefinder. Pure experience. Pure feel. She fired. Hendrix on the spotting scope. Long pause. Hit. 6 inches left of the first shot. The other instructor leaned in. Wind pushed it. That's a confirmed kill both times. Maciel stood, shouldered her rifle. Didn't celebrate, didn't gloat. Just nodded once and walked back to the line, rain streaming down her face. Davis whispered to another candidate. She's not regular army trained, that's something else. The doubt was cracking. Fracturing. This wasn't beginner's luck. This was mastery someone had spent years building. Week 4. The class was down to 19 students. 9 had washed out. Torres was still there, but quieter now, less cocky. Evening. Barracks common area. Maciel sat at a table, cleaning her rifle for the 100th time. Other candidates studied range cards and terrain features. Sergeant First Class Hendrix entered with a clipboard. His boots echoed on the tile floor. Sergeant Hay. Outside. She set down her cleaning rod and followed him out. They stood under the light by the barracks entrance. Moths circled the yellow bulb, making shadows dance across their faces. Hendrix studied her for a moment. I looked at your file, Hay. Yes, Sergeant. Says here you shot expert in basic training. First time qualifying. Yes, Sergeant. Says your drill sergeant recommended you for the school before you even finished advanced individual training. Yes, Sergeant. Long pause. Hendrix shifted his weight. But that's not the whole story, is it? Silence. Just the sound of moths hitting the light and distant thunder rolling across Georgia hills. Maciel met his eyes. No, Sergeant. How long you been shooting? 11 years, Sergeant. Since I was 12. Competition? Hunting, varmint control, predator management on family ranches in California and Oregon. Hendricks nodded slowly. What were you hunting? Coyotes, bobcats, occasional mountain lion. Longest shot was 940 yards on a coyote harassing cattle. Hendricks let out a low whistle. 940 yards. That was professional distance. That was the kind of shot you took when you'd spent years reading wind and terrain and ballistics. And they called you what in high school? Maciel almost smiled. Almost. Sniper, Sergeant. Another long pause. The rain had stopped. The air smelled like wet pine and Georgia clay. You've been holding back in this course, haven't you? No, Sergeant. I've been learning your way. The Army way. My uncle taught me to shoot, but you're teaching me to be a sniper. Hendricks studied her face. Saw something there. Humility. Respect. But also quiet, absolute confidence. Tomorrow's the final qualification. Don't hold back. Roger, Sergeant. Week 7, Day 29. Final qualification. The course was simple on paper. 10 shots at unknown distances from 200 to 1,000 yards. Hit 8 out of 10 to pass. Historically, about 40% of students who made it this far passed the final qual. Conditions were brutal. Wind 15 miles per hour, gusting to 25. Overcast sky. Barometric pressure dropping. The kind of conditions that made even experienced shooters second-guess themselves. Torres went before Maciel. Hit 7 out of 10. Failed by 1 shot. Walked off the range without making eye contact with anyone. His gear would be packed by sunset. Back to his unit. Back to being just another infantryman. Maciel stepped to the firing line. The entire remaining class was watching now. Word had spread about her background. About the 940-yard coyote shot. About the perfect score on the unknown distance range. Hendricks was behind the spotting scope. Another instructor had the timer. The atmosphere felt electric despite the gray clouds. She didn't rush. Each shot was calculated, patient, deliberate. Shot 1, 200 yards. Hit. Shot 2, 350 yards. Hit. Shot 3, 500 yards. Hit. Shot 4, 650 yards. Hit. Shot 5, 800 yards. Wind gust came up just as she was about to fire. She waited. 30 full seconds, finger on the trigger but not pulling, waiting for the gust to settle. Other students would have forced the shot. She waited. The wind calmed. She fired. Hit. Shot 6. 1,000 yards, maximum distance. The target was barely visible even through the scope. At this range, the bullet would take over a second to reach the target. Over a second where wind, humidity, air density, and a dozen other factors could push the round off course. She chambered the round, settled into her position. Her breathing slowed until it was almost invisible. The world narrowed to the reticle and the target and the space between them. She felt the wind on her face, heard it moving through the tree line to her left, saw the mirage patterns in her scope that told her what the air was doing between her and the target. She made her adjustments, 7.6 mils for distance, 2.3 mils for wind, aimed at a point in space where geometry and physics and experience told her the bullet and target would meet. She squeezed the trigger. The rifle bucked. The world seemed to hold its breath. Hendricks's voice, quiet but clear. Impact. Center mass. 4 more shots. 4 more hits. 10 for 10. Perfect score. She stood. Cleared her weapon. Shouldered her rifle. Turned to walk off the range, her face showing nothing. No smile. No celebration. Just the calm of someone who'd done exactly what she came to do. Sergeant Hay. She stopped, turned. Hendricks was standing now, away from the spotting scope. That's the first perfect score this class has seen in 2 years. She nodded once. "Thank you, Sergeant. No fanfare, no theatrics. Just acknowledgement between professionals." Back at the barracks, Davis was the first to approach. Extended his hand. "Damn good shooting, Sergeant." She shook it. "Thanks." One by one, the others followed. Quiet handshakes. Nods of respect. Not applause. Not cheers. Just the recognition that passes between warriors who've seen someone prove themselves under pressure. This was the respect that mattered, not given. Earned. November 3rd, 2023. Graduation Day. The graduation field at Fort Moore was packed with families. 15 soldiers stood in formation, survivors from the original class of 28. They wore their dress uniforms, boots shined to mirrors, faces showing the exhaustion and pride of those who'd endured. Maciel stood in that formation. On her chest, a new tab. Snipper. Black and gold. Earned. In the crowd, her family watched. Her mother, her father, and Uncle Si, arms crossed, slight smile on his weathered face. They'd missed basic training because of COVID restrictions. This was the first time they'd seen her in uniform. The ceremony was brief. Names called. Tabs awarded. Handshakes with the commandant. Maciel accepted hers with a simple nod. It was just another patch, but it represented everything. Every doubt she'd faced, every whispered insult, every moment she'd wanted to quit but chose to endure. After the ceremony, Uncle Si approached. They didn't hug. That wasn't their way. Just a nod. "You did it, kid. You taught me how." He shook his head. "I taught you to shoot. The Army taught you to be a sniper. You taught yourself to endure." Pause. The Georgia sun was warm on their faces. "You remember that friend who said you'd never make it?" Maciel's expression didn't change. "Every single day, Uncle Si." "Good. Keep that fuel. You'll need it where you're going." She looked at her graduating class. The men who doubted her now shook her hand with genuine respect. Davis. Even Hendricks offered a rare smile, but she knew the truth. This wasn't the end. This was just the beginning. She was assigned to the 173rd Airborne Brigade, deploying to Europe. After that, Jumpmaster certification. Then, Alaska. Every new assignment, she'd have to prove herself again. New team, new doubts, new challenges. And she would meet every single one the same way she'd met this one. With patience, with precision, and with the quiet, unshakable determination of someone who'd been underestimated her entire life and used it as fuel. Maciel Hay didn't become the first active-duty female Army sniper because she was the loudest voice in the room. She became it because she was the most patient, the most precise, the most unwilling to quit when everyone expected her to fail. Sometimes the quietest soldiers carry the loudest legacies. And sometimes the nickname you earn as a kid becomes the destiny you forge as a warrior. Sergeant Maciel Hay is currently serving with the 173rd Airborne Brigade in Europe, carrying forward a legacy that will inspire generations of female soldiers to come. Her next goal, Jumpmaster certification. Her next assignment, Alaska. Her message to those who doubted her, watch me. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe for more hidden sniper stories. These stories keep the courage alive for generations to come. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from, and if you know a veteran whose story deserves to be told, let me know in the comments below. These aren't just stories, they're legacies. And every view, every share, every subscription ensures these heroes are never forgotten. Thank you for watching. And thank you to all who serve.